good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the March edition of the MPF webinar series. We'll start shortly, formally. We'd like to get on a little early and welcome folks as they join. And we've got with us my colleague and good friend, Uri Gutfreund over there. Hi, Uri.
Hey, John, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good. If I could just interrupt you, John, I think one of our settings we just need to adjust.
Are you interrupting me already?
I am 1 minute in and I'm already interrupting you.
You love doing that, Uri. Stop it.
Well, I don't know if I love doing that.
What
Um,
setting are we talking about?
yeah, co-host
Oh, that
setting.
one. You want to hog a
Yeah,
little control. Uh-huh.
yeah, that's what it
No,
is. Yeah.
you're not gonna. I'm not gonna do that.
Your
Uh,
call, your call. Just gives more work
yeah.
for
And if
you.
the whole thing collapses, y'all can blame it on me.
That too.
But hang on, Juan. Are you able to? Juan, my assistant, is down there, making sure we're behaving ourselves. And just in case there is any glitch in the internet, it's always good security to put that in. So, Uri, despite my teasing, I'm going to make you a organizer.
Or whatever it's called here. Yeah, an
organizer.
organizer.
And hate to leave our friend Bill out there, but Bill Josten is our guest speaker, and we got a great program. Bill's going to share with us some really strong data. Bill, welcome.
Pleasure to be here, gentlemen. Thank you so much for the invitation.
We love to have you. And where are you sitting today, William?
I am currently hunkered in the basement of my Twin Cities area home, avoiding what appears to be very high winds and snowflakes.
Snowflakes.
It's
Wow.
still March.
Wow. And I sit here in Atlanta. The high is forecast to be 80 degrees today, our warmest day of the year.
It was
Except
66
for the
here yesterday.
pollen. I love springtime in Atlanta.
Yeah, it was 66 here yesterday, and the high today is 38.
Wow. The poor plants and birds must freak out up, up your way this time of year.
Yep. Yeah, it's
Oh,
not great, but I mean, you get used to it. That's what
it's great.
layers are for, John.
Is that what it is? I'm getting ready to move to Florida. I'm going to pack it up and move toward retirement, I think, and later on this year. And layers. It's like I'm going to have to give away a lot of clothes, I think, because we don't have much of a chance to wear them.
See, I
But
take grief over the cold all year, but I say I can always put more layers on. There's only so many I can take off before it's a misdemeanor.
I always say it's not the heat, it's the humidity, or it's whatever we're supposed to say in South Florida, where the heat, the heat and humidity can get up into the mid 90s come June and July. So we're at the top of the hour. Enough banter. Let's jump right into our topic of the day, which is an overview of the Thomson Reuters report on the state of the U.S. legal market. And we've asked Bill specifically to talk about its implications for smaller and mid-sized law firms. That kind of hits our sweet spot. And so much of this data collected by Citibank and Wells Fargo and all these other folks tend to be AmLaw 200 oriented. And much of we'll ask Bill to set up who participates in his survey, where he's pulling his data, but it's really good stuff. Law firms love data. Lawyers love data. So this is good stuff to share with your colleagues post event. I'm going to run the polling. We always have polling. Folks love that. Uri, formal introduction. Senior VP, Managing Principal at Ames and Goff. And so good to see you. Tell us what Ames and Goff's is all about, Uri, real quick.
Thank you, John. We are national insurance brokers for law firms and supporting the profession, participating and hosting programs like these for our clients and the world of legal world. So glad to be here today, John. Thank you.
Always good to work with you. This is our number 58 in our webinar series. We started when COVID hit. We had nothing better to do. And I run a managing partner conference, and our upcoming event, I'll tell you about in a little bit. And I do a little consulting on the side as the Remsen Group. And happy to come to your firm retreat and participate as you'd like. We're delighted to introduce our guest speaker today. That's William Josten, Esquire, ALRAP. What the hell is that, Bill?
Well, first of all, John, you got to understand that the goal is to have more initials behind your name than letters in it. So
Ah,
that's really, I mean, I probably should include BAJD Esquire ALRAP, right? Just to kind of bolster it up a little bit there. But the ALRAP it's an accreditation. It's the Accredited Legal Revenue Assurance Professional Accreditation. It's put out by a group called the True Value Partnering Institute, and it's essentially an accreditation for folks that have done training and the certification work in sort of protecting law firm revenue streams. You know, we go through all the work of setting our rate schedules and negotiating the agreed rates that the clients will actually pay us. And so how do we shepherd that through from what they agree to pay to what we actually end up collecting? And so monitoring that process, looking for ways to optimize it, boost realization within law firms, and ultimately
wow.
improve
And I
profitability.
confessed I'd never heard of the group until we started planning for this webinar. And how many members is it U.S. based or folks from all over the world?
It is globally based. It's about, gosh, I don't even know what the total membership is. It's a relatively small membership. Truthfully, it's probably a few hundred members, but it's geared towards law firm C levels in probably the AmLaw second hundred size, and the primary audience is legal project management and pricing professionals. So you've
Interesting.
got to be at least a director level
Interesting.
to really be eligible for membership in the group. So that's probably why you hadn't heard of it. Is it's kind of it's a small but very mighty group.
Well, and they don't want people like me probably lurking around, so it's some secret society. And legal marketplace innovation strategist. Love the title. And Bill is at Thompson Reuters. He's been at our live programs a couple of times over the years and is among the primary authors of this report we'll review today as we get into our topic. Bill's out of Minneapolis, where you said it was 68 yesterday and 38 today
Snowing
or
today.
something like that. Wow.
Yep.
And you live there voluntarily. Is that correct?
So far.
Cool. Um, a couple of shameless plugs. We're doing our webinars. Uri and I have got a good rhythm, churning them out every third Wednesday of the month, 2 o'clock Eastern. And our whole body of work you can find on our website, the recordings, the archives. And please, if you have suggestions on topics, speakers, we want to hear from you and deliver webinars that are relevant, timely to leaders of smaller and mid-sized law firms. Our big show every year is in Atlanta. We're sold out almost. It'll be May 7 and 8. If you're interested, go check it out. There are only a few seats left. We've been doing this for 25 years, and we'll gather about 120 managing partners from throughout the U.S. And Uri, we had another Canadian register yesterday. So
Ooh,
the Canadians are boycotting us this year, but we have a
or
few
not.
coming over. Our fall symposium, we hone in on empowering women in leadership. Details to be announced. Our newsletter, we run listservs, Zoom calls, trying to build this community to help managing partners find peers, people they know and trust, because we're all dealing with a lot of the same issues, and our website is a treasure trove of information as well. Setting up for today's conference, we have 118 registered, which is slightly above average last year or so. And we'll do some surveys. When you're registered, we ask you some questions. We'll reveal those results. Everything's recorded. We'll push it out to you. And what we ask of you is your feedback, good, bad, indifferent. Tell us what you think so we can come up with better programming to help participants on today's program. Our first polling question, and we ask this every time, and this is mostly for our guest speaker to give us a sense of firm sizes represented on today's call. So if you would, vote early and let us know the firm sizes represented, and here they flow. Bill, Uri, I'm not sure if you can see these results coming in.
Yep. Yep.
But this hits squarely on our profile of firms. Mid-size we define as sort of 10 to 100 lawyers, and sure enough, that's about what we got today. And we'll end that and share the results for the benefit of the audience. Firm sizes on today's call. So moving on, bringing on the data. People love it. And we encourage firms, what other firms are doing is relevant, but what should you all be doing that might be different, innovative, break from the herd, like this curious little guy wondering, how can we be different? When you registered, rate setting in 2025. Wow. Uri, we've been asking this question frequently over the years. What do you think of this?
I think this has been what we've seen the last years consistently, well over inflation. I'll coin and ask Bill to comment maybe later on. This is legal inflation. This is keeping pace with salaries and then some, in my opinion. So nice job.
As opposed to illegal inflation?
No, I mean law firm inflation,
I know what you
talent
mean.
inflation.
I know. I was going through the airport years ago, and I had a legal marketing association polo shirt on, and
Mm,
the gate agent says, "Legal marketing, what's that?" I said, "Well, it's the antithesis of the illegal marketing
mm,
association." But this is aggressive rate setting. Bill,
it
what do you
is.
think of this?
Yeah, this actually tailors in exactly with some of the data that we're going to look at in a couple of the upcoming slides. It's kind of right where I expected the numbers to fall.
We've been encouraging firms to don't be shy about your rate setting. And look at that. That's pretty compelling data if you have reluctant partners at your firm who are a little nervous about bumping rates. It's something you should do every year, maybe 5%,
Mm.
as opposed to waiting 5 years and then bumping rates 20%. But aggressive rate setting, even as inflation ebbs a bit, looks like here this year firms are making a big push to improve their rates. And the next question we ask might be a little more important, which is, are you getting those rates? Bill, what do you think?
Well, I mean, if you don't ask, you don't get, right? And I think what's critical to understand here, and we'll talk a little bit about this in some of the upcoming data, is there's it may feel like a really heavy lift for rates for your individual firm, but that's because you have the frame of reference of the rates that your firm normally charges. Your clients don't necessarily. So if you can be a little bit more aggressive, especially if you're picking up new clients, if you're getting new business, they're going to pay. They're not going to complain because it might be 10% higher for you. It's still 40% cheaper for them.
Especially if they're using big law. I think we'll talk about this, the value proposition that smaller and mid-sized firms can provide clients compared to some of the M law firms. Uri, are you surprised by this, successful achieving of the rate increases?
No, I'm not surprised either. But what I think is interesting, as Bill said, people only know their own rates. So the only way to feel confident is twofold. Number one, finding out the data, right? So we're going to talk about that a little today, but also having rate information. What is the going rate? Where am I? And there's a lot of data out there you can get that sort of categorizes where the rates are. And then number two, um, having uh, the knowledge of who specifically are your competitors and what are they doing, not just the industry but your competitors, and then your perspective changes. So this is great data. A smart firm once said to me, we raise our rates until people start complaining. And so this just shows, so if people are paying their bill, that's the ultimate vote. The rates are fine.
Yeah, my first firm where I was in house back in the 80s when I got hired into the, legal profession, business of law, if our clients aren't complaining about the rates, we're not charging enough. There
It's
was
too
a
low.
real swagger that to be confident that you're providing great service, great results, and have the confidence to assert the rates. And hopefully this data may give you some confidence and you can share it with your colleagues who may be a little hesitant. Hey, look what other firms are doing. We don't have the absolute numbers. We dealt with this in percentages. We don't want to be accused of any antitrust after all. We also asked our final question when you registered was how concerned are you about the changing economic conditions here in the US and elsewhere? And we're starting to see concern about the economy, the tariff wars, inflation creeping back into the picture. Bill, is this something you're starting to see in your data as you collect it from law firms?
I mean, we see concern about it, but we don't necessarily see the effects of it. the truth of the matter is that uncertainty favors lawyers. Pretty much the only thing that's really detrimental to lawyers is a consistent down market. And that has to be a long-term consistent down market. The last time we really saw an economic downturn impact law firms in any real measurable, appreciable way was in the great financial crisis of 2007-8. And even in that, the legal market was probably 18 months behind the general economy because things were in recession for so long. If you look at the pandemic as the most recent analog, where we had a very severe market upheaval, Q2, Q3 of 2020 were just absolutely abhorrent for the majority of the economy. Law firms went gangbusters because everything was changing so rapidly and day to day, and you had, it's actually somewhat akin to what we see now with a lot of the concerns over tariffs and trade policy and things like that, but much more direct actually, because the tariffs and trade policy and all that, that is secondary and tertiary effects in the market, whereas in 2020 we had direct effects. It was literally day to day. Your business can be open, no it can't, well maybe it can, but no it can't, and now you can only allow so many people in, and so it was very direct impacts, and again very, very uncertain. For the overall economy, they started to recover by about Q4 of 2020 as a lot of that washed out of the system. For law firms, they never slowed down because people call their lawyers on the way down in a market. People call their lawyers on the way up in a market. People call their lawyers when it's going up and down in a market. The only time they stop calling their lawyers is when it's consistently down.
Well, and I've observed over the years the balance, transactional practices may slow a bit during uncertain times. Litigation, on the other hand, counterbalances that. The first firm that I referenced earlier, we were in South Florida. Talk about cyclical economies around tourism, real estate development. I mean, it was boom and bust. And, we had transactional lawyers become workout specialists and then, kind of anticipate the economic conditions, get ahead of it a little. And we managed to balance it out, being sensitive to transaction, real estate, and litigation, which tends to rise, bankruptcy and such. Uri, what are you hearing in New York among your colleagues in the Big Apple?
A little uncertainty what's going to happen. I think Q1, January, February, gangbusters, particularly felt in corporate. Corporate said the end of last year going to this year, going crazy, going gangbusters, now getting a little dicey.
Are clients paying? Are you hearing any rumblings about slow pay clients at all? Receivables kind of bumping up?
No, have not.
No. Bill, are you seeing any increase in receivables and collections? The part of it.
Nothing appreciable yet, and any of the slides that we're seeing in metrics like realization aren't due to client side behaviors, it's due to firm side behaviors. We're seeing differences in and these are not new trends, or not recent things. These are things that we've seen for years, where lawyers, as their rates go up, they tend to lose confidence. They do more to proactively write down their bills before they send them out, which of course has an impact on firm realizations. But again, that's not anything that we've seen as an emerging trend since January. That's something I've been writing about that for 10 years.
Okay. So that's our opening set of data when you registered. And we also asked you your questions for Bill. And so Uri will periodically reference that set of questions and number of comments about the death of the billable hour and if and when that'll happen. AI, what's that going to do to us? And, the Trump effect. So some of the concerns. Bill, we're going to let you hog the stage for a little bit and take us through the highlights of your report. Tell us a little bit about the report and what's in there. We will send it along with our handout or our follow-up, and we featured in our weekly earlier in the year. But this is one of these reports that every managing partner should digest, share with the colleagues. There's a handful of reports out there that tend to come out beginning of the year, and this is one of them, the Thompson Reuters State Report on the State of the U.S. Legal Market. So tell us a little bit about this report, Bill, and its history, and then we'll dive into some of the slides you wanted to share.
Sure. Well, some folks on the call may know this colloquially as the Georgetown Report. We do this in collaboration with the Georgetown Law Center on Ethics in the Legal Profession. Yes, it's taken me a long time to be able to say that fast.
I can't do it.
We historically we've partnered with our good friend Jim Jones, who very tragically passed away right before this report came out this year. So we do have the report dedicated to Jim this year, and his contributions will be incredibly missed going forward. We do this report it comes out typically the first working Tuesday of January every year, unless that happens to be like the second or third of January. So it comes out early in the year. This is why I don't usually get to take a break between Christmas and New Year's, because we're getting this ready to go out the door. You're familiar, a lot of people may be familiar with, the Citi report, the Wells Fargo report, the PwC report. There's a critical difference between this report and those. Those reports are all based off of surveys. So they're surveying audiences, typically, as you mentioned earlier, John, AmLaw 200, or if not, just specifically AmLaw 100, and they're asking questions around a lot of the same metrics that we have, but it's all self-reported data, similar to what the AmLaw is. And so everybody always kind of reads the AmLaw results with a little bit of a jaded eye, because it's all self-reported data, and there's not a whole lot stopping firms from putting the finger on the scale. And frankly, American Lawyer will tell you that if certain firms don't answer, then AmLaw just sort of takes their best guess at the numbers.
Yeah, we make it.
Yeah, we don't do that. Our
Right.
survey actually comes from our data is largely drawn from kind of two primary data sources. Anything qualitative comes from interviews that we're conducting, either with law firm managing partners or corporate general counsel. We do about 3,000 of those interviews a year, and those are all open questions on the phone, spending 30 to 60 minutes talking with these folks. We take the answers, we run them through AI, we spot trends in the responses, we categorize and code based on the open-ended responses, but they're not picking from lists of things where we're prompting them to confine their answers to certain choices. The quantitative data in terms of demand, rates, expenses, most of what's in the report actually comes from a tool that's called Financial Insights, and that's a tool
That
we
used to
have.
be Peer Monitor, right?
Peer
Right,
Monitor,
Bill?
correct.
What we knew
Yep.
as Peer Monitor. Mm-hmm.
Yep, it plugs into the back end of law firms' financial management systems, and it actually extracts 65 metrics a month directly from their financial management tools. The firms have access to that platform then, and they can do real-time comparisons. So it is the 19th of March. The February data is actually live in that tool already. So that's why, if you look at some of the competitor reports in the market, they may come out in a similar time frame to us, but the data is probably 6 months old at that point. Our report comes out in January, and the data is current through November, from data that we received by about the 15th of December. So we turn on this very, very quickly.
So
and
that
the
that
sample is
self-reported data. You got to look on that with a little skepticism, I would think.
well, I mean, and to be fair, John, all of this should be viewed as directional, right? Because even with our data that we're pulling directly from the financial management systems, the data we're going to look at today, this is the all firms average. So this is all firms in our sample, which is roughly half the AmLaw 100.
That's what I was going to ask you. Who's in here? The sizes, the numbers of firms that.
It's about 50 of the AmLaw 100, 50 of the AmLaw 200, and then the other 95 to 100 firms roughly are what we call mid-size. So 35 lawyers up to probably about 300 would be the larger side of our mid-size. But it's a really nice, comprehensive, representative sample, very diverse practice-wise, geographically, et cetera. But this should all be looked at as sort of directionally indicative.
Yeah.
These numbers are not bang on for anybody. Like no individual firm is going to be able to look at the averages in this report and say, yep, we match up with every single one of these. I mean, frankly, no firm would want to match up with every single one of these. Everything's going to have to be tailored, but it is intended to be directionally indicative.
And Bill, are you doing any data gathering among smaller firms, the 10 to 100 lawyer firms? Are there any reports that Thompson Reuters offers specific? Because, that hits a lot of our audience.
Mm-hmm.
Anything out there you guys are publishing these folks should be aware of?
We do periodically do a report on small law firms, which is solos to 30s. That typically doesn't get into much of the financial metric stuff, because when we talk financial metrics, sort of our stock and trade with the financial metrics is the real world aspect of the data. So we don't tend to ask for self-report data from those smaller firms. We're looking more at strategies. What are they seeing? What are their challenges? How are they confronting those challenges? Those types of questions. And then for more of the financial data, like I said, the peer monitor or the financial insight sample goes down to about 35 lawyers, which again, not bang on the numbers, but we do talk about mid-size versus second 100 versus AmLaw 100 firms. We're actually doing a separate report just on the mid-size segment, so it'll be that 35 to 250 lawyers.
Send it on through to us because
that'll be
that's our sweet spot, is that 25 to say 100 lawyers. If you had to really narrow it, that's our sweet spot. We'll bring in larger, smaller, but they're looking for this kind of data.
Yeah,
and
that report will be out the 22nd of April.
Definitely bring it to us, and we'll maybe do a special webinar on that. And Uri, any reports that you encourage your clients to take a look at beyond those we've referenced already?
Yeah, it's interesting. There'll be trends in the AmLaw 200, 100, and 200 reports. My clients look to that. They look to that for trends, where the hot areas of practice are. And then overall as a trend, if AmLaw is up 10% or 20%, where are we? So just from comparison purposes, but yeah, this is a good one.
In the early days, our first conferences we did for managing partners in the early 20s in Florida, and I invited Dan DiPietro, who ran the Citibank law firm group, and that their report, and he'd come down and run through the AmLaw numbers, and the folks at the conference would go, "That's nice to know, but kind of not relevant. I'm running a 25 lawyer firm here in Orlando, and give me something that's relevant to firms our size and our market." So it's nice to know, but boy, if you could give me that more geographic specific, firm size specific data, and we try to bring that on to the smaller and mid-sized firms best we can.
John, I would just add, sorry, just one more thing is that you had asked me what other reports I recommend. We do our own report in New York. We do a financial survey of about 50 mid-sized firms. That's in the 15 to 100 lawyer firms in New York, and we get about 50 of them. So if you're in the New York region, you should be in touch with us, because we do have great data on small and mid-sized firms, but it's regional to the New York region.
In New York,
New
and
Jersey,
New York's numbers are eye-popping compared to the rest of the country.
You always say that,
and that's
John.
a good segue. And I neglected to talk a little bit about our programs next week in New York, in New Jersey. If you happen to be in that part of the country, why don't you tell us a little bit about what we got going on there?
Oh, sure, John. Thank you. Yeah, we have New Jersey on Tuesday, New York on Wednesday, and a CFO conference on Thursday next week, all about a related topic of, you guessed it, profitability and profitability and compensation. So it's a hot topic, and we're excited. Half-day programs all 3 days, and if anybody's in New York, you can still come to them. So yeah, very excited.
Well, not just anybody, Uri. You keep a close eye on that door.
We do. Managing partners on Tuesday, New Jersey. Managing partners on Wednesday. CFOs on Thursday. Thanks, John.
Great session. And if you're interested in learning more, contact Uri and I, and we may find a place for you. But they're really, really good programs specific to the New York market. And we're in Morristown, New Jersey, where we'll gather leaders from New Jersey firms. And well, we've been doing this for almost 10 years, it seems.
That's right. And then the Yale Club in New York. Nice venue.
Yeah. I like staying there. So Bill, let's jump to your slides. Bill shared with us 4 slides that he wanted to talk about. So here's the first.
Yeah, well, I would have had more to show, John, but you told me I only had 10 minutes. We're going to have to move quick.
I did, and I'm watching the time here.
I know you are. So all of this is pulled more or less directly from the State of the Legal Market report, and there's a lot more in-depth discussion and analysis of some of these high-level findings in the report. So I strongly encourage folks to give that a read once it gets sent out. But to sort of set a starting point, we need to understand where we are financially today to understand where we're going. And the analogy I use here, anybody who's heard me present knows that I use a lot of analogy. If you've ever tried to use Google Maps or Waze or whatever when you don't have a GPS signal, it doesn't do you any damn good, because you don't know where you are, therefore it can't give you directions to where you need to go. So we need to understand where we stand today to understand what the future might hold for us. We're going to look at that through really the lens of three key metrics. First of all, demand. The way that we define demand for the purposes of our reports is really growth in total billable hours worked. So we'll be looking at demand, but we're looking at demand either in the aggregate or by particular practices as an average of what the average firm in our sample would have experienced. So we're not going to say that the total demand in the market grew by a certain percentage. We don't see the total market, but the average firm in our sample, which is a pretty good representative sample, grew by a certain percentage. We're going to talk about rates, and the growth there we're looking at is growth in average agreed rates, or what we also call worked rates, that clients are agreeing to pay. And the reason I look at that as opposed to standard rates is, frankly, I don't put a lot of stock in standard rates. Standard rates are essentially the rate that you put on the back of the hotel room door. There's a hotel I stay in New York fairly
Right.
frequently. The rate on the back of the room door is $2,000 a night. They get that one night a year, and that's New Year's Eve. Other than that, I usually am there in January, and I pay $97 a night on average for the same room. So I don't tend to put a lot of stock in standard rates. I carry much more, to me, agreed rates carry much more weight because that's indicative of the buying appetite of the client. And then finally, we look at expenses, both overhead and attorney expenses, or what we call direct expenses. That does not include equity partner comp. That's compensated, or that's accounted for differently. Just sort of a broad note on all of these early on is we're looking at really strong performance in all three metrics, but it's historically atypical. And we're going to talk about some of that atypicality as we go through. We'll start with demand here. We see widespread growth for demand in services, 2.6% on average through November of last year. By the time we include the December numbers, it was 2.5, 2.7, something like that. It was pretty similar. What was interesting here and what is historically atypical about this particular growth pattern is we're seeing growth in both transactional and countercyclical practices. Countercyclical, think bankruptcy, labor and employment, litigation. And we pulled out two of them here, litigation and corporate, both up at the same time. And these are year-to-date figures through the end of the year. So to see both of those growing at the same time was really kind of an interesting finding for us. Litigation was atypical because we're in a very prolonged period of growth for litigation. Typically, litigation grows in fits and starts, but we're in a multi-year litigation growth pattern, and that actually has been increasing and reinforced at the beginning of this year. So that counter-cyclical nature of the market is still holding strong. But we're also seeing strong performance in corporate work. Not so much in M&A yet, but just in general corporate work. That was actually a bit of a surprise to us, and that's a trend that we're hoping continues. As we look going forward throughout the rest of the year, we're watching to see, does litigation continue to hold or does it soften? If it softens, do the transactional practices start to rise to pick up demand or to shore up demand growth, which would be sort of the typical pattern? Do they both grow or do they both fall? I mean, there's a number of different possibilities that could be happening right now. So we're watching very closely to see which of those comes to pass. But another historically atypical thing that we saw in demand growth was growth across all segments. Every segment had something that they could brag about in terms of their demand performance at the end of last year.
Bill,
Midsize, notably, because they were midsize is actually now at their third year of leading the market in terms of demand growth. That has never happened before. We've only had 1 year prior when midsize led. That was 2015, and now we're in a 3-year pattern with midsize in front.
Does this factor in at all the more consumer-facing practices like family law, personal injury, estate planning, things like that?
To an extent, but not a great extent. Most of those, so family law and those types of things that are more litigation-based, those are going to fall into the litigation practice area. Typically speaking, the more B2C type practice areas, they're accounted for, but they make up less than 1 percentage point of total demand tracked. Roughly 28% of the total demand that we track in our sample is litigation demand, and that's a really wide, broad encompassing area. Family law, estate planning, that type of stuff. Family law would fall under litigation. Estate planning would be categorized elsewhere, but it's not enough to really move the needle, and we can't dive into that practice real discreetly. One of the limitations in our data set is we don't have coding down to the matter level. So what we look at is the time cards of the attorneys. So we don't know who these attorneys are. We don't know the firms that they work at, but data flows in, and we know that an individual time card is mapped to a particular practice area. That's how we track it.
Uri, any comment before we move on to slide number 2 from Bill?
Move on.
There you go.
So another key part of the second message we talked about was rates, and rates continue to defy gravity. No, that is not intended to be an homage to Wicked, but this is the fastest pace of rate growth that we've seen since the great financial crisis. Both Uri and John asked me what the GSE
I
stands for.
didn't. I knew what it was. At least I
You
think
did
like I knew
not.
what it
Don't feed
was.
me that line of bull. Um,
Don't hate,
so
Bill.
I'm not hating. I'm just clarifying. But we're seeing historically really strong pace of rate growth here. This is the strongest we've seen since the GFC, bar none. It's going well beyond the pace of inflation. In a bit of our pre-call, Uri, I think, referred to it as legal inflation, and John countered that with the illegal inflation. No, not really what we mean, but yeah, it's legal market-driven inflation through the cost of talent and things like that. All segments actually exceeded their 2023 pace. We've been not only increasing every year, but we've been on an almost nearly upward trajectory, nearly constant upward trajectory since the beginning of 2023. AmLaw 100s grew their rates an average of an excess of 8%. I think it was 8.2 at the end of the year. So for this audience, I want to pause there really quick and well, why are you talking about the AmLaw 100? John just got done saying we hate it when people talk about the AmLaw 100.
Well, I didn't
Think
say
about
we
it this
hate
way.
it, Bill. I said,
Well, but let's put it in context this way. The AmLaw 100 firms are the most expensive firms out there. They're also getting more expensive the fastest. So in the context of this slide that we showed earlier, where 62 or 65% of the respondents from this particular webinar are saying they grew between 4 and 9%. Okay, so even those that said, of the 31% that said 6 to 9, let's assume that 5 percentage points of that was 8 to 9%. So you're growing at the same rate of growth as the AmLaw 100, but you're starting from a baseline that's probably 60% cheaper. So that's why I said in the earlier comment that, you may have a frame of reference of like, oh my gosh, this is so much more expensive than I was last year, but your clients don't necessarily know that, particularly if you're picking up new clients. Now, one thing I want to note just from a numerical standpoint, this could be due in part to the hiring of more senior laterals. This is average work rate growth. So to illustrate, if Uri and I have a firm together, he bills at $10 an hour, I bill at $1 an hour, our average agreed rate is $5.50 an hour. If 1 month I do nothing, he does everything, our agreed rate for that month is now $10 an hour. So it looks like average rate growth was just stellar. In reality, it was just a shift in proportion. The rates themselves didn't change.
Bill, when you say agreed rate, is that fair to say effective rate that's actually paid or agreed to? Because there may be a subtle difference.
It's agreed to. So we actually track rates 4 different ways. We look at standard, agreed, billed, and collected. And they tend to kind of group up almost in like a Vulcan salute, where agreed and standard tend to be pretty close, billed and collected tend to be pretty close, but there's a wide gap between between the agreed and the billed. And that's where partners tend to do, frankly, kind of dumb things and write down a fair amount of time. That actually is where we see the biggest decline in realization happen, is between what the client agreed to pay and what they're actually
pre-bill
billed.
write-offs.
Right.
Yeah, stop that.
Yep.
Stop that.
The other big story with rates right now is because of this pace of growth, it does raise questions of sustainability. Frankly, those questions are a lot more prevalent in the AmLaw 100. We're already starting to see indications. We did a report back in September of last year. You can just Google law firm rates 2024. It'll be the first non-sponsored result because we nailed the SEO on that thing. But one of the things that we found was the AmLaw 100 is actually seeing a bit of an uptick in a gap in the realization from their bill to their collected rate, which maybe is an indication that clients are getting a little bit sick of those rates. 1, clients are moving work. 2, they're pushing back on the invoices a little bit harder, but that's not happening in the mid-size segment. Clients still continue. They're paying 100% of the invoice, but they're not taking any larger haircut than they ever have before.
And Bill, we talked about that this may be opportunities for mid-law because of the value proposition.
100%.
And the pressure on the in-house counsel to rein in the spend, and maybe looking to smaller and mid-sized firms. We don't have that big name behind us, but boy, we pack above our weight. We punch above our weight. And do you see more work shifting from the say the Fortune 500, the Fortune 1000 companies,
Yeah.
more of a willingness to give important matters to mid-sized law firms.
Not only do we see it now, we've seen it for years. We've actually named it. We call it demand mobility. We've been studying it for so long. We named the
Demand
thing. I
mobility.
mean, yeah, we brought it home. We gave it a name. It's got a dog dish and a collar now. We've been watching it for so long. Um, I mean, and not only do we see it showing up in the data, but anecdotally, I was at an event just last night with a bunch of GCs here in Minnesota, and think about the companies that are headquartered here in Minnesota. Several of the GCs of those companies were at the event last night. We talked about exactly that. The GCs are being very explicit that they want to send work to lower cost law firms, and across the room, nodding heads. Oh yeah, we're absolutely doing
Wow.
that. And during a roundtable discussion, they were very actively talking about not only that they do that, but what types of work they do that with, and not just the kinds of firms. Like, oh yeah, we like looking for mid-sized firms. No, they're sharing specific names of firms. So if you're one of those firms where you can get work from one, I mean, really from any corporate client, but particularly from the big ones, do a good job, deliver it quickly, deliver it at a reasonable price point, they will remember that. It will look very, very favorable to them. The other thing I would notice, just in looking at data that we've seen over years, the number one segment of firms that handle, for example, litigation matters for the Fortune 50, so the 50 biggest companies in the world, the number one segment that does their litigation is law firms with between 2 and 15 lawyers. And by 15 percentage points or better. I mean, it's significant.
You know, we've suggested the networks like the Meritoses and the Lex Mundis and the tag laws. That imprimatur. If you're part of a network recognized by the in-house counsel, the CFO, the company's board of directors, that may give you kind of the imprimatur that we're a vetted quality firm, and it's not a high risk proposition to give an important matter to a smaller or mid-sized law firm.
Yeah, I think
Think
that certainly helps
networks
to get you on the radar.
have a role to play here?
It can
I
certainly
love the
help
networks.
It can certainly help to get you on the radar. What's really, I mean, that may help to get foot in the door, but what's really going to help boost share of wallet is the way you deliver the result. I mean, we're sort of in a market right now where the paradigm of cheap, fast, and quality, pick 2 out of the 3, that's kind of broken right now, truthfully. I don't know that actually applies in today's market, because things can be done cheaper, they can be done faster, and they don't have to be done with any lesser quality because of what technology is enabling us to do, which actually takes us to the expenses slide, if you want to flip, John.
Yeah, I like that share of wallet. I like that share of wallet. Uri, before we leave this one, anything you want to add or?
Well, I save my comments to Bill does the next slide, because I think a lot of firms need to raise rates because of this slide. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, well, and I think you're right, Uri. We need to have cash on hand. Well, part of that is tying back to the initial point that we had a really good 2024 that can be a springboard into some investment that needs to happen in 2025. We see expenses already growing on average well above the averages we saw in the 20 teens. Overhead expenses growing by 5.9%. You can almost double that for technology expenses. And direct expenses growing by 5.5. Yeah, I think we have it broken down in the actual report. I didn't throw it in this slide, but I think in the actual report we have it broken down that tech expenses are growing at essentially double the pace of what inflation would say they need to be. It's at near 9%. And a lot of that is due to AI investment that needs to be made. And I choose the word needs very advisedly, because as I mentioned before, smaller firms have the ability to, one, you're already more agile, right? You can already pivot to things more quickly than a large enterprise major law firm can do. But you sort of have the ability to break that paradigm of cheap, fast, and quality. You have the ability to do all 3 right now, so there's no good reason not to. But it does require some technological implementation to make that happen. We did a paper with our president of our legal business. His name is Raghu Ramanathan, earlier this year, and he looked at sort of what the future law firm might look like. And one of the things he said was, lawyers love to race to be second. Well, these are my words, not his, but essentially the same idea. Lawyers love to race to be second, but what a lot of the law firms sitting on the sidelines in the AI race right now don't realize is the race to be second is already well underway. So if you're sitting back and waiting for the technology to be proven or to make sure that AI is not going to be a flash in the pan or whatever. It's not. The technology works, and if you haven't started to at least look at it yet, you're not racing to be second. The people that are racing to be second are already working with it. And there is a real risk in that. To be able to afford that, you may need to look at your rate structure. But again, keep in mind, I think, Uri, this is maybe your point too, that you still have a decided cost advantage, even if you do decide to lean on those rates a little bit more. And frankly, John, you sort of said something like this, but Colin Jasper, who's one of the he's a globally recognized pricing expert out of Australia. He'll tell you that if your pricing doesn't scare at least some people, it's not high enough.
Right.
So there's something to that. And when we look at the overall confluence of these factors, the demand, the rates, the expenses, we still see highly profitable results in 2024. We've got two different profits per lawyer chart here, not profits per equity partner, but profits per lawyer, where in 2024, we saw a nice recovery on a rolling 12-month basis on the left-hand side here. And if we index at 2019 as sort of our starting point, so the pre-pandemic, pre-transactional boom of 2021 as our starting point, we're still 26.2% more profitable today, or at the end of last year rather, than we were in 2019. And that's even with having a couple of hard years in 22 and 23 between the transactional bust and inflation.
Uri, you wanted to jump in and comment on this aspect?
Yeah, well, these expenses are putting a lot of pressure on a lot of my clients in New York. The rates are going up through the roof, but in a lot of firms, particularly for talent, although you see with AI and technology, that too, direct expenses is salaries largely for our firms,
Salaries and technology.
and that is really high. Last year in our little survey, our smaller survey, we saw a drop in profits actually year over year, and this is why. The money's got to come from somewhere. So that's where it came from last year. We'll see.
Interesting. By the way, I'm going to join your law firm because my rate's $20 an hour. I think you're one, Bill, and
10.
Uri's 10.
Well,
I want to.
That's going to make me have to redo the average. I can't do an average of 31 divided by 3 in my head, John.
So
we're going to boost your rate up to 22.
Oh, okay.
And we can do
I'm
33.
afraid that's a lot of money now for my clients.
Yeah, but now it takes me average to 11, and I can do that mentally.
I haven't raised my rates in 15 years, Bill. Come on, don't
Too
make
bad.
me
That's what it's going to
uncomfortable.
take.
So we have a few polling questions here. I'm looking at the time. We've got about 15 minutes left. Want to make sure we get to these. People love the data. We asked this question for many, many, many years. Here today, we are limited to just 5 answers. Let me get my little poll out here and get to where we want to be in terms of your billable hour expectation for the associate attorneys. Tell us where you are at your law firms in terms of billable hour expectation for associates. Then we're going to take it to the next level and say, are you getting that? Are they hitting it? And here come the results on this question. Looks like about half of our audience has voted. So if you haven't yet, please do. And Bill, I invite your comments to this result once we close the poll. I got 2/3. Polls are closing quickly. It's almost 7 o'clock, everybody. So I'll end and reveal our results as to billable hour expectation. Boy, that just keeps sliding down and down and down for the work-life balance, it seems. Comments, Mr. Josten?
This seems kind of right where I would expect it to be. In fact, I'm a little surprised at the 34% that are reporting 1,800 to 2,000.
Hang on, let me go back there and reshare that result.
Yeah, with the 1,800 to 2,000 there, I mean, I guess the lawyer in me says, well, we did say expectation. I would be curious about attainment there because we are in the midst of a 15-year trend, 16 years now, of continually declining productivity as we measure it. And let's be honest, we don't measure it correctly from an economic standpoint because we measure inputs as a measure of productivity, not outputs. I've got a whole other theory on that I could do a separate hour on. But I mean, this just seems in line for where I kind of think the reality of the market is.
Last time we asked this to our big sample size, we do a leadership survey every other year. So we'll be putting that out there next month. And 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago, 1,800, nice bell curve around 1,800 hours. And, 20 years ago, I think it was closer to 2,000, 2,100. And this just keeps steadily declining. Boy, do we hear the lament among managing partners in terms of associate productivity and work ethic. Uri,
Uh,
comments on this?
Well, I'm curious. I have a follow-up question on this related bill. We've been seeing, I think that's what you're referring to, the 15-year drop
yeah,
in associate hours. Are you seeing the same drop in partner hours?
yeah, yeah, we are. I mean, it's a drop in overall productivity as a whole. Um,
Hmm.
it's just across the board. So, John, to the point about the lament, I mean, I hear it. In fact, I hear it all the time, and it's not that I don't understand it. It's just I don't necessarily 100% agree with it because we are in the midst of a 15-year decline in productivity across the board. What we are not in the midst of is a 15-year decline in revenue and profit.
Hmm.
There's a
Yeah,
detachment between revenue and
yeah.
profit, and frankly, turning back to AI, because let's face it, it's now federal law that if you don't talk about AI in a presentation, you didn't give a presentation.
It's a
Uh,
federal law. Oh, wow.
Not
well,
yet.
Okay.
it's
Not
almost
yet.
it's almost a UN mandate at this point.
A
But
UN mandate.
with this idea of like I was on record with American Lawyer in January of 24 that I don't know how long traditional measures of productivity are actually going to matter all that much. I know
Yeah,
that's a controversial thing to say,
it
but
is.
truthfully, I mean, as someone who analyzes the legal market, if I was putting on my law firm executive director or managing partner hat, I really don't care how much time you work. I care how much money you make. If you can
Yep.
show up for 15 minutes a year and make me $1 billion, you have guaranteed employment for as long as you want it. Because I've done this with managing partners who tell me, nope, hours is the most important thing. Okay, let's pretend I work for you. I billed 2,500 hours last year. How was my year? Oh man, that's a great year. Okay, but I billed it at
Oh,
$1 an hour. How did I
I
do?
was going to say you only bill a buck an hour and collect
Right?
80 cents on the dollar. So,
Exactly. So right there, it proves that something matters more than
yeah,
just the hours, and it's how
yeah,
you turn those hours into dollars.
yeah,
Frankly, AI is going to do something. AI, I think, has the potential to do things for us that, frankly, lawyers can't do today, which is make money in their sleep.
yeah. It's incredible. In some firms, we're trying to encourage firms to lean in, learn how to play with it, get policy, train your people, because it's here. It's not going away. And it's interesting, the clients, and are they pressing you to use AI or not? And a real mixed bag on that. Some of our clients say, no, no, no. Our clients are insisting we not use it, and others are saying, no, our clients are insisting that we do use it responsibly and ethically.
Yeah.
We're trying to build an AI community among managing partners, smaller and mid-sized firms, just managing partners, helping each other out. And we talk about Thomson Reuters and co-counsel. We talk about the LexisNexis offering and Chat and Claude and Perplexity, all these tools. And we did a program on ethical considerations. ABA has promulgated some guidance. It's nothing new. Confidentiality, fact checking your work product, uh, ethical billing practices. It's the same stuff. It's just a fresh set of tools. And you learn
Yeah.
how to
Just
use them or you don't.
yeah. Don't forget how
And
to be an ethical lawyer, and you should be fine.
We got another polling question out there. We asked about the expectation and kind of building on that. Are they, meaning your associate attorneys, consistently hitting their numbers? And about half of you have voted. Come on, folks. Are your associates hitting their bogeys here in terms of billable hour expectation? And look at this.
Expectation meets reality.
Mm.
Yeah.
Uri, what do you want? Let me invite your comment here on this puppy.
Well,
These
this is
results.
a redefinition of the word expectation, isn't it? I
Yeah.
mean, in what context would you say an expectation of the job is X, and yet you see almost 60% are not hitting their expectation? I mean, I think there's something wrong with having that barometer and consistently the majority of people missing it. Not sure
Yeah,
what the.
the lower you think we lower the expectation, more people would hit that. And it's
Hmm.
it's not happening. Boy, do we hear a lot of managing partners express frustration around this in terms of feeding our people, feeding our people, and rewarding their productivity and looking at performance-based compensation, bonuses as you exceed the expectations, give people that incentive. That works in a lot of cases. And it's amazing, Uri, I see firms rewarding underperformance. We
Well,
lower the
that's what they're doing.
expectation, you still
This is
can't get there, and yet we bonus you because we don't want to lose you. It's and as an MBA type person, that's just crazy. You reward performance.
Yeah,
You
but
hit
to,
your
to be
minimum
fair,
expectation, you keep your job. Uh,
John, again, the question that we're asking about though is expectations as it relates to billable hours, not
yes,
necessarily expectations as it relates to revenues realizations. I
true.
mean, there's plenty of
But we are
qualitative
talking
assessment that goes
about
into that.
associates, Bill, who often don't have control over the write-offs, write-downs, rate setting, you know,
Right.
and
But there's qualitative reasons that can go into that too, though. I mean, if someone's not hitting a billable hour target, but there's other qualitative assessments that aren't captured just in a quantitative billable hour assessment, that can be an important factor, particularly for firms the size of what we're talking about in our audience today, where they don't necessarily have the luxury of a lot of leverage. And from a succession planning and leverage standpoint, they need bodies in the bottom side of that pyramid. And frankly, trying to go out and acquire talent in a lateral market is cost prohibitive right now because of what
that's
the
tough.
the salary expectations are.
It's tough. Ari, you want to weigh in before we move on to our final audience polling question?
Well, I just think Bill's point is firms are doing just fine even with the lower expectation. I think partners' main lament is, oh my goodness, if they're only doing 1,400, imagine how much money we'd really make if we're at 1,800.
Yeah, yeah. That realization number, a really important KPI, and against budget, how are we doing in terms of the rates, the hours, and our realization numbers? I think that's a really key KPI for managing partners to take a look at. Our final polling question, we're at T minus 6 minutes before we have to say goodbye. But this is how's your firm doing so far in 2025 compared to expectations? Much better, somewhat better, about what we thought it would be, or we're not doing as well as we thought. So here come the results. We got about, boy, a good half of you in. We'll hold open for a little longer. Uh, Bill, what are you seeing in your data at Thomson Reuters in terms of how firms are doing so far this year?
Well, so looking at it from a financial performance standpoint, we're a little early in the year to tell. We've only got 2 months of data in that we've seen so far, and frankly, anything that we've seen from a financial performance is all based off of last year's work as opposed to this year's work. So the new rate schedules haven't really hit our data yet. They don't start to come in until at best the end of March, and we don't really have a critical mass of hours on the new rate schedules until really the end of
Okay.
May to start making any assessments off of. And we haven't pulled any expense data. We only pull expense data quarterly. So it's a little bit difficult for me to say.
Okay.
But with what we're seeing in terms of the rate growth that firms were able to push through and have been getting from an agreed rate standpoint so far this year, along with what we're seeing from a demand perspective in the first 2 months of data that I've seen so far, the year is actually teeing up to be off to a pretty strong start.
Look at that, 41%, 42% say we're doing better than we thought we might in
Mhm.
2025 so far. Almost half say it's about where we thought. Uri, comments to this?
Yeah, I said earlier, I think hot out of the gates, January, February, a little slowing the last couple of weeks. People a little nervous with the situation, but yeah, hot out of the gates, a continuation of the end of 24.
Firms are doing pretty well, it seems, in
Hmm.
spite of the doom and gloom for all the reasons we talk about here. Law firms seem to survive recessions pretty well, generally speaking. We are now down to 4 minutes. So we asked that question just a moment ago. We'll share all this data. Here's our closing slide. We like to, offer our guidance to managing partners. Don't be shy about your rates. There's the data. Be aggressive. During the inflationary period, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, inflation bumping up 8, 9%. But even as inflation wanes, firms are getting it. And hopefully we provided you some data to reinforce the notion of raising rates and being aggressive. The KPIs. Bill, if you had one KPI you think would be the most important for most firms, is there one you think firm leaders this size should really be paying attention to?
Particularly for 2025, it's realization. That's going to
Realization.
be, I think, key. One, that's where firms can do the most damage to themselves without realizing it. And two, if we hit a point where rate structures are not sustainable and clients really, clamp down on how much rates can increase, the way that we improve profitability is by flexing profit margin. We do that through managing realizations.
KPIs. What do you measure? What do you reward? Who do you share it with? Uri and I think, share a notion that transparency is good in terms of what you share with your income partners, with your associates. Let them see this stuff and appreciate the profit side, the business side of running the law firm. Underperformers, firms tend to carry them. And, you want to increase profits per equity partner. One way to do that is de-equitize underperformers. That'll help boost your numbers. But I think that profit per equity partner number can be very easily manipulated. Bill, I like your notion. It's profit per lawyer is a better way to look at this. Generative AI and performance based. Uri and I were talking about lockstep, parity, and really looking at performance to reward your folks. Uri, any guidance you might offer on top of this list?
Well, I think people always, and we talk about it a lot, but dealing with underperformers, it's not just the carry cost. That's easy to calculate. And as we've said, law firms are doing well. They say, okay, we have an underperformer that's costing us, their salary or whatever, or the delta in their salary to their productivity. But it's far deeper. And so law firm leaders have to deal with it because of the ripple effect, right?
Yeah.
Real performers don't want to be there. It says a
Right.
lot more about management than the cost. If you tolerate it, you tolerate bad behavior, you tolerate underperformers. Superstars don't like that. So that's
Exactly.
my takeaway from here.
I couldn't agree more. They don't like to carry the dead weight. Your hard charging, rising superstars get a little annoyed if they perceive
Yep.
that they're carrying some dead weight, and they may decide to bolt if it gets, chronic enough. AI, we talked a little bit about, and Bill, anything you might add to this list before we bring it home?
No, by and large, I agree with this. I think the downsizing is really difficult. A lot of firms are choosing to manage their equity partners through attrition rather than active de-equitization. But firms are definitely sort of tailoring down their equity partnership ranks because, frankly, it boosts PEP figures. And moving towards a performance-based compensation model, I think that is really key. You want to reward, you want to figure out what does actually matter and compensate based on that. It may or may not actually be the hours.
Yep. Great conversation, guys. We could go on all afternoon as we often can, and our challenge is to take all this good stuff and compress it into an hour, lively and thought-provoking, and get you some good data. Our conference I mentioned earlier, it's coming up and almost sold out. Our early registration period ended Friday. We have just a handful of seats left. If you're interested, give us a call. Check out our website. I referenced the AI community. It's building slowly. We've got about 50 managing partners in there. We gather every month on a Zoom call to compare notes, and those participating are highly engaged. So if you want to, get with a group of peers trying to sort through AI, talk about Thomson Reuters co-counsel product, among other things, you might want to check that out. And we'll send some follow up on that to today's call. Reminders next month, we're going to bring on the Tavish Group, and they do a technology survey and had 140 law firms weigh in on investing in technology. And so we're going to showcase that and have Morris Tavish and Dara Fitzpatrick join us on April 16. We'll send you the recording, the handouts, all our polling results. We want to thank our friends at Nine Sale. They do SEO specifically for mid-sized law firms. They do a great job, and they've been helping us summarize and recap these conversations. So with that, we thank Bill Josten for his time and attention to our program. Thank you, Bill. We'll miss you in
Pleasure.
Atlanta this year, but
Yeah, me too.
hope to get you back soon. And thank you for being with us today. And Uri, always good to be with you. We'll see you next week in New York. And then again in Atlanta early in May. So thank you, gentlemen. Have a great day, everybody, and we'll see you next time. Take care.
Thank you, John.
Bye, all.